think all systems are go. The laptop seems to be functioning. I'm sorry to say that I was out without my laptop for about a week. I had the blue screen of death.
Yeah, it hits us all occasionally, but it's back from the shop and everyone's celebrating this morning.
Yes, they are, because Roy Moore, who of course we dealt with in a previous episode, who was gunning for senator in America, he has lost spectacularly.
He has. It's just the best news. The Liberal fight back has started. I'm going to quote David Schneider, who's a British actor. He says it better than me. He says, white supremacists, misogynists, racists, people who yearn for the return of slavery, men who get evicted from malls for harassing teenage girls, anti-Semites, your guy took one hell of a beating.
Oh, he did, yes, and he lost to Doug Jones, wasn't it? It was the first Democrat to win in any statewide office in Alabama in decades.
Yeah, long time.
Because Roy Moore, I don't know if you heard, Neil, but there was a few sexual assault claims, allegedly.
Allegedly, the police confirmed that he was known to them.
Yeah.
He was an open racist.
He was a mall crawler, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But that was okay with Donald Trump, who endorsed him.
Of course, and it's also okay with the 80% of evangelical Christians.
Yes, that's right, yeah. I mean, because he supports their cause. He goes to church every Sunday. He's very pro-life. And so, who cares what else he does in his free time?
Exactly. It just shows being an evangelical Christian is a no judge whether you have morals or not.
Another reason to celebrate, I think, your Twitter, Reason Now, at Reason Coffee Shop, has enjoyed a big spike over the past few days.
Yes, just doing my usual Brexit stuff, but there's a massive movement in the UK at the moment where Remain campaigners are getting together. It's a hashtag FBPE, which stands for Follow Back Pro EU.
So Reason Now FBPE.
Yes, we're all getting organised and we're starting to upset the Brexiteers, put it that way.
So it reminds me a little bit of what we just spoke about with Roy Moore. I mean, the tide seems to be turning on both sides of the water.
Yeah, it seems to have really emboldened the Liberals. Let's hope it keeps going. There's been false dawns before, but yeah, we can put these haters back in their boxes.
Yes, and speaking of liberalism, Neil, we have an article here, response to Tim Farron's speech on tolerance and the future of liberalism. And of course, Tim Farron is the former leader of the Liberal Democrats over here in the UK, and he gave a speech in which he stated that liberalism is eating itself by being intolerant of Christianity. Now, this is a weird one, isn't it?
It is very strange. Yeah, it's very interesting because he talks about liberalism eating itself because of the intolerance of Christianity, and then he goes to make out some spurious nonsense that he's obviously heard from an American evangelical about atheism.
Yes, the article goes on to say that the content of his speech makes a number of bold claims for the status of religion in public life, but in doing so betrays a number of misunderstandings around atheism, secularism, and what it is that these terms really mean. Now, before we go into this, let's just have a listen, just to refresh people's memory about Tim Farron. He stepped down, I think it was last year, was it?
Yep, just after the general election.
Let's listen to his little speech when he stepped down as the Liberal leader.
I am passionate about defending the rights and liberties of people who believe very different things to me. There are Christians in politics who take the view that they should impose the tenets of their faith on society, but I have not taken that approach because I fundamentally disagree with it. It is not liberal, and actually it's counterproductive when it comes to advancing the gospel. Even so, I seem to have been the subject of suspicion because of what I believe and who my faith is in which case we are kidding ourselves if we think we yet live in a tolerant, liberal society. And that's why I have chosen to step down as leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Okay, and now he's made another speech just recently, a couple of weeks ago, and in this speech Tim Farron has claimed that atheism is not the absence of belief, it is a belief in absence and therefore the absence of common values. Where you've heard that before. It's a belief in there being no unifying truth. But if there is no unifying truth, then its own standard, the belief that there is no unifying truth, must also be bogus. Now this is beginning to sound like some of these apologists like William Lane Craig, who get up and debate people like Christopher Hitchens and people like that, and say that there has to be some, as this guy calls it, unifying truth, but some great objective moral standard, which really everybody on earth should adhere to. In other words, God's standard.
Yeah. He then goes on to say, if you declare that there is no unifying truth, then it stands to reason that this declaration isn't true either. Ergo, atheism doesn't exist. Now, Mr. Tim Farron, I am actually a very liberal person. I voted for the Liberal Democrats in the past. But fuck you telling me that my atheism doesn't exist. My atheism is purely the fact, a lack of a belief in a God. You don't get to dictate to me what atheism is.
Yeah.
This is a man who had to leave his post. Basically, he's casting himself as a victim, along with Christians right now. But he's not. What this man is a person who couldn't openly say that gay sex isn't a sin. That's why he had to leave office. So him talking all this absolute nonsense about atheism, the reason you had to leave office is because you couldn't say gay sex was a sin, and a man who can't say that should not be in charge of a liberal party. They are better off without you, and hopefully they will be stronger without you. You make me sick, quite frankly.
So yet again, a politician has to step down because of sex.
Yeah, but not an actual sexual scandal this time in the same way.
No, but still it has something to do with sex. And so, yeah, look at this. Ergo, atheism doesn't exist, and I refuse to believe in something that doesn't exist. So he is not an atheist in terms of believing in Thor and Mithras and all these other gods, I suppose.
3,000 other versions of Christianity as well.
Yeah.
He's chosen his own one that he believes is right. As we always say, people can believe whatever they want, but you don't get to dictate to me what I can and cannot believe.
Exactly. And he goes on to say, I am not a secularist, but I believe in a secular society where there is no state faith. But he does support separation of church and state. But what he forgets is that the UK definitely privileges Christianity. And the state schools, the religious, the faith schools, all overwhelmingly Christian, as it says here, and I agree with that.
Absolutely, and there may be some places in the world where they can say Christians are being persecuted. In fact, there's many in the Middle East and around the world. But in the UK, Christianity has a privileged position, so to try to claim to be a victim...
Even more so now.
Yeah, in this country is just ridiculous. So get off your high horse, do whatever you want with your religion, move along. You are not needed here, Mr. Farron.
And this brings us very nicely to... Secular schools don't give children the values to avoid extremism, Archbishop says. Now, this is our friend, again from another episode, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Secular schools are failing to provide children with a system of values to prevent them from being led into extremism. Schools have an unduly individualistic outlook, which does not make children feel they are part of a community, leaving them vulnerable to radicalization, he said in the House of Lords debate on education. Now, Justin Welby said, we live in a country where an overarching story, which is the framework for explaining life, has more or less disappeared. And this sounds pretty much what Tim Farron was saying.
Yeah, and just before we go on, the reason that overarching story about how life came about is disappearing is because science has proved it wrong, Mr. Welby. Now, this is a classic case of someone who a lot of liberals would think is a nice guy because he'll come out and, like we said a few weeks ago, he'll condemn Trump. Someone goes, oh, what a lovely guy. But you have to watch what they're doing in the background. This guy, he's basically calling atheists immoral. He's calling secular schools immoral. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Welby. Sorry to get on my high horse today, but you follow a book that condones slavery. You don't get to tell me I'm immoral.
As we know that people who withhold the faith, or any faith, that they are always bastions of morality, aren't they? And they never get in any way caught with their pants down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
shining examples.
Yeah, and it wasn't the only time Mr. Welby's been caught this week doing things. So, turns out he was lobbying our government to stop their attempts to close down illegal faith schools. Faith schools are harming children, not teaching them the curriculum, leaving them exposed to be undereducated for the rest of their lives, and he lobbied to have that stopped.
Keeping them in a box, creating an us and them mentality, leaving them unequipped for the world outside.
Yeah, so who says mainstream religion doesn't do any harm? You have to watch what it's doing in the background because it's always trying to gain control. Get on with your religion, do what you want, keep out of our faces, and let's It's just ridiculous. It is the law in this country that faith schools have to teach a curriculum. The government was literally trying to close down faith schools that were breaking the law, and Mr. Welby lobbied to stop them. I don't know what more to say.
He lobbied to keep them breaking the law, are you saying? Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And he later added, the challenge is the weak, secular and functional narrative that successive governments have sought to insert in the place of our historic Christian-based understanding, whether explicitly or implicitly. He said that an expansion of the Church of England schools could help solve educational inequality. However, secular campaigners called his comments an appalling and cynical abuse of religious privilege.
Absolutely. He's just using his position again to try to create tons more religious schools in the UK so we can indoctrinate loads more kids. Well, I'm sorry, there's a big movement to stop this happening.
A lot of what we talk about, Neil, I'm sure you'll agree, is the quashing of individuality. Because if that happens, if more and more kids come out of school feeling that they are an individual, that they have something to say, then they are going to question the government, they're going to question churches, they're going to question the status quo. And those in positions of power, they are scared shitless of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really funny earlier he mentioned that we wouldn't bring up a tolerant society and we were in danger of radicalising kids. Well, the way you bring up an intolerant society and radicalising kids is you have individual faith schools. You have Muslim schools, you have Christian schools, you have Jewish schools. No, we need secular schools. Once people have that individuality, they're much more caring. They come out and they're not scared of the world. It doesn't mean atheist
school either, does it?
Oh no, I wouldn't want atheism taught in any subjects apart from alongside what it is in religious education, the same as every other thing. It's just teach them science, teach them how things work, and let people live their lives.
And ideally critical thinking, though I think they would have a problem with that as well.
Yeah, religious schools aren't great at teaching critical thinking. We're not great at it generally in the UK. I've not been in the school system for a while, so I don't want to denigrate teachers because I've heard they're doing some great work at younger levels with that, and it's getting better, so hopefully that continues.
And, well, unfortunately, we have to continue with this theme, going over to Kentucky. Kentucky teachers say that atheist students will be eaten by bears. Now, it seems a bit strange, but this is right in line with what we've just been saying with the previous two articles. Both students and teachers join in the bullying of pupils they believed to be non-Christians. So this is the Stanton Elementary School in Stanton, Kentucky. Ultra-religious staff and zealous Christian students of Stanton Elementary School are caught harassing other students and brutally bullying students who are not Christians or less religious than they are.
A frustrated Powell County mother says she's at her wit's end due to how her children are being treated at Stanton Elementary School.
She says for 2 years, students and even teachers have bullied her kids because they aren't Christian. Catherine Gardner has the LEX18 Big Story at 6.
Powell County mother of two, Heather Estes, says no matter what she does or what she says, nothing changes for the better at Stanton Elementary.
I've tried to address it with the school for over a year now. And while the principal at the school is a very nice principal, it just continues to happen.
Estes says the bullying all started when students and even teachers noticed her two kids don't attend Upper Room. Powell County Schools describe Upper Room as a non-denominational, student-led Christian organization that meets every morning before school starts. But Estes says from what her 10-year-old and 8-year-old have told her,
because I don't want to feel like I'm a bad person for that.
No, you're not a bad person.
It's anything but inclusive.
My children are asked every day, do you believe in God? Why don't you go? He's been told by teachers that things like the atheists will be eaten by bears.
Although Powell County Superintendent Michael Tate declined to go on camera, he says Estes' complaints are not falling on deaf ears and that the school system is actually looking into the complaints.
This is the stuff I have to deal with.
Covering the news in Powell County, Catherine Gardner, LEX18 News.
And this is pretty upsetting, really. The article goes on to say, The Bible championing public school located in rural Kentucky has come into focus after social media outed the supposedly secular education institution for creating a toxic environment. Non-religious students who do not attend the upper room session of the school, as it's called, are regularly bullied by aggressive Christian students.
Well,
how's that for Christian values, huh?
Those Christian kids are more than free to have their classes, but they should not be bullying atheist kids. And if it was the other way around, and if it was a bunch of atheists meeting and they were bullying Christian kids, I would be just as appalled.
Yeah, absolutely. I just looked it up. It's Elijah and the Two Bears, which is 2 Kings 2:23-25, which of course is in the lovely Old Testament. And that's about some kids who are making fun of Elijah, who is one of God's favorites. And they make fun of him, and God says, well, we're not going to have any of that. And he sends out 2, I think it's she-bears,
yes.
Doesn't matter what sex they are, but it's 2 bears who basically come out and maul the children.
So that was nice of God to do that, wasn't it?
Well, it was a lesson that we all had to learn, really. Don't make fun of one of God's favorites. So obviously these people have taken that to heart, and I don't know whether it's the kids or even the teachers who actually said to these atheist kids or non-believing kids that people like you will be eaten by bears.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just the extremism is unbelievable, and as far as I'm concerned, they're obviously just not very firm in their faith, otherwise they wouldn't feel they needed to bully others, would they?
No, absolutely. And this mother, Heather Estes, she said that not just shunning them, but we're actively bullying them, like slamming tables into theirs and physically abusing them as well. The article goes on to say the teacher allegedly said historians concur that the most historically accurate book in the world is the Bible.
Well, that teacher's got a shock coming. I'm not sure they should be a teacher if they actually believe that the Bible is the most historically accurate book in the world. How many contradictions? I can't remember. Hundreds of thousands. I don't know.
We could do a whole show on that, really. But I mean, just looking at the Exodus and things like that, and where was the whole dynastic kingdoms of the Egyptians that barely mentioned, and just goes on and on. And on. Yeah, but again, this is. I know we're talking about extremist areas of the world, and people have extremist ideas, but when they have these ideas, sometimes they are just so vociferous with it that it affects other people, and really they have to know when to keep it under their hats.
Yeah, exactly. They've got their meeting every morning. That's great, that's fine. I don't see the need then to come out of that meeting and then start bullying people.
But what they really need to do is just to sometimes just not take it all so seriously and just have a bit of a laugh about it. Like they could refer to this article here. A 300-year-old note is found inside the butt of Jesus.
This is such a great story. Go ahead.
Okay, restorers of an 18th century statue of Jesus Christ in Spain have found a handwritten note hidden up his bum. No, seriously, and I saw a photograph of this. They took it down, they were cleaning it, and there was literally like a hatch on the statue's backside. And whoever had erected the statue in the first place put a little note in there, basically a time capsule. The message, written carefully in calligraphy and dating back to 1777, had been stuffed up the Messiah's backside by a priest, preserving it like a time capsule. It contains key information about the period and details on popular pastimes, the economic situation, political and religious matters, famous people, and other topics. I think that's quite cool, actually.
I mean, historians are loving it because it's a first-hand account of what was going on in the era at the time, so historians are absolutely loving it. But just the fact that, one, why did they build this bum trapdoor into the Jesus statue?
I mean, when you design it, you don't think, you know what we should do? We should put a trapdoor right in his ass. You know, I mean, I don't understand that. Perhaps one of the listeners can elucidate for us. But
why did they decide to take it down after all these years?
I think they were restoring it or cleaning it, something like that. And
well, why pick Jesus' butt?
Well, they probably saw that there was a trapdoor. Oh, what's in here?
It's a great story. It's a bit of fun, and just show you. Who knows when a bit of history will pop up that we didn't know about.
Well, yeah, I think we should look in more religious statues' backsides. Because
People will be looking in Jesus' bum all over the world right now.
Yeah, or other deities that we won't mention, because I don't know, perhaps this is what you're supposed to do. You know, perhaps this was the way they did it back in the day.
Maybe there was a big movement of writing historical facts and sticking them inside statues.
A big movement, no pun intended. Right, okay, and on that bombshell, I guess, we'll have to leave it for now and see what transpires this coming week, see which way the world tips.
Yeah, I hope there's not too many stories like this Tim Farron on that one, because that got my blooming blood pressure up this week.
Yeah, but it's
all okay today because Roy Moore didn't get voted in.
Yeah, that's a good sign. That's a good sign that the public are not going to put up with too much bullshit any longer.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, excellent. Neil, I will see you next week.